Hi, this is Marie, and we are going to do a couple more types of beads right now. The first one we're going to do is a geometric bead. And in order to do a geometric bead, or a quilt bead, if you will, because it will be something like patching quilt pieces, we need long, square-shaped canes, or snakes, if you will, except snakes aren't square. And you can roll out your clay flat and then cut strips with your rulers, or you can get an extruder. This is an extruder, and you fill the barrel with clay and push on it, and this is set for a few minutes, so it's going to push really, really, really hard. But you push on it, and you can get a piece of clay. Now I've made a little tool, a couple of pieces of board that are hinged together, and I put my tool in a hole in the top board and then step on the top board, and it squirts it out pretty good because I just don't have the hand strength to make it work very well. And after it's set, and this is probably set 10 or 15 minutes, it's even stiffer. So anyways, we can make these with a extrusion tool, and Kemper makes these extrusion syringes, and I believe you could get them almost any place you can get the clay. Kemper also makes some pretty good tissue blades. I got my last tissue blades at a place called Rings and Things out in Oregon. They do primarily beads and bead supply. Now we can use these as they are, as squares, or we could cut them in a diagonal and use them as triangles. However, they're so small that I just generally let them alone. And the extrusion tools do have different end pieces. I'm using a square for this one. They do have a triangle. They have several different kinds of circles. They've got a screen-like thing that shoots out a whole bunch of little strings like spaghetti. So, you know, whatever shape you want to make, they probably have an end for it. Now what I'm going to do is build a 9-patch square here, and I'm going to start by laying out a dark green, a light green, and a dark green for my first row. For my second row, I'm going to have a light green, and again I'm working on an incline. Maybe I'll turn this to the end so you can see it a little better, and I won't be having them roll around. And I'm trying to get these even. And then I'm going to have a pink one for the center of my 9-patch. And I know these aren't the best colors in the world, but I'm using scrap clay, and this is what I've got. And then I'm going to put another light green one. Now you need 4 square canes of a dark color, 4 square canes of a light color, and then you need 1 cane of a third color for the center patch. Now this third row will be just like the first one. We're going to do a dark green, a light green. Yep. I do have a mess. Let's try it again. And of course you don't want to twist these, so that makes it even more difficult here on my inclined plane. And then we do another dark one. So the first row is dark, light, dark. The second row is light, center, light. And the third row is dark, light, dark. So now we have a cane, and you can see kind of what it looks like. And what we're going to do is we're going to pinch and squeeze these 9 canes together to where they stick together, where the different colors of clay adhere to each other. And again, I started up without my brayer, so hang on just a second and let me go get that. Here we are. My brayer doesn't fit in my toolbox, so I keep it in a separate place, and it's not one that I can reach from this location. So anyways, to keep it square and to keep the corners sharp, I generally use a roller of some sort. If you don't have a brayer, you could use an acrylic tube or roller. I know they sell acrylic rollers. Just all sorts of things you could use. And we're going to make this, as you can see, it's getting longer as we push it together. And let me slice off one end so you can see what we've got. And again, we've got kind of a cute cane. Now, had we made a lot of these, now I'm just going to cheat a little bit and make these really, really short. You could make one cane with the light on the outside corners, and another one with the dark on the corners. And you could put them together. You could put 4 canes together to make, oh gosh, a 36 patch. This one, if I put these canes together and reduced them, would look like a plaid. But if you had made another cane that had light on the outside and dark on the inside, you could alternate them to make your 36 patch. It would be a really kind of cute patchwork quilty type thing. Now that we've got this made, I'm going to go ahead and with my finger smooth these edges, because there's still a little bit of rough spot from the edges of the extruded cane. And doing this, of course, makes it a little bit longer. And every time you make something longer, it gets a narrower diameter, I guess I'll say, even though this isn't circular. And there's 2 things that we can do with this. Again, I'm going to even off the ends. We can cut these about maybe 3/8 of an inch deep, and make some beads that look just like the 9 patch. We could cover this cane with another color, maybe a black, and a nice black around the outside edge would emphasize and give continuity to these pieces. Another thing we could do is slice them as absolutely thin as we can. And how thin you can slice depends on practice. how sharp your blade is, how good your eye is, and various other things. But then we could take and use these really thin slices to cover a bead made out of scrap clay. And what I'm going to try to do when I put the beads or the pieces on is try to offset the dark and the light. So where I had a light before, I would have a dark. I don't know how much I can actually do that and how well it'll actually work, but at least I'm going to try. And quite often you'll find this happening. And I've got just a little bit of piece that got cut off earlier that I'm going to throw on here because I just have a little bit to do. Now once you've put these on, you are going to have to roll them. To smooth out all the joins and make it back to its round shape, and you've got kind of an interesting looking bead. Let's cover another one. And again, this is just scrap clay. I made a cane of a turtle, and when I reduced it, of course, you know, your ends always get squashed a little bit one way or the other, so I had a lot of end left over. Now this time what I've done is I've put a strip all the way around the edge of this circle, and then I'm adding a patch on top and bottom. My plan on going light on dark and light on dark didn't work very well, so I thought I'd see what this looks like. And again, roll it out to re-round it and to meld all those seams, because you don't want seams showing. And you see we've got similar beads. I don't know if you could tell them apart. But anyways, that's what we do with some of our scrap beads. Now let me set this aside here. I think we're done with this, and we'll come back in a moment and try Skinner beads. Now Skinner beads, you need 2 pieces of clay rolled flat. Now ordinarily you'd make a little bit bigger one than this, but again I'm still using my scrap clay, and this is how much pink I had left and how much green I had left. And they need to be roughly the same size and shape. So what we'll do is we'll take and trim off where the pink's a little bit bigger than the green. We'll trim that off. Now what I'm going to do is cut diagonally corner to corner. And then I'm going to take them apart, and I'm going to put both pink pieces one on top of the other, and both green pieces one on top of the other, to where I have a stack of 2 layers, but I have green on one side and pink on the other side. And what a Skinner blend will do will be make a smooth gradation from one side to the other, from pink to green. Now you do need to have a pasta machine to do this. It just takes, oh gosh, you could work weeks I think on this if you didn't have a pasta machine. But you decide which end is going to go through the pasta machine first. And that's always the end that's going to go through the pasta machine. Now I'm going to roll this out real quickly here to show you what we would do in the pasta machine. And I'll get you started here, and then I'll go over there and do the rest of it on the machine. So we take this, we've made it about half the thickness that it was before, and then we're going to fold it in half like this. And the bottom half always goes down into the pasta machine to be squeezed out for the next one. And here's my fake pasta machine. I start at the fold and move up, and that's so we don't trap air in it. And then again, when we get that out, we're going to fold it in half, put the fold through the machine, and keep on putting it through the same way, and folding it in half and putting it through the same way. So you hang on, and I'll go run this through the pasta machine and show you what it looks like. Here we are with our completed Skinner blend, and you can see it has the pure pink on one side, the pinkish tan, a tannish olive, a tannish green, and then a bright green. So what I'm going to do is cut off one end of this square, and I'm going to start at pure color and start rolling it. And I want to roll it as tightly as I can. And what I did with this, you notice it's very thin. Pasta machines have different thickness settings, and mine starts at a 7 at thickest and 1 at its very narrowest. And I ran it through, I did the blend about 5 or 6, and then I ran it through gradually smaller, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now at this other end, I'm going to make a slanting cut. It will seal up a little better if it has a real thin edge on it, and I do want to make sure that I seal that up. Now I'm going to pinch together, starting with the center, because we do want to get all that air out. And then I'm going to roll it just a little bit. And because we've got such a small amount of clay, or we're going to have a very small cane. But you can see, if you look at the end of it, how it starts with a pink and comes out to a green. Now what I'm going to do, just for grins, is cut it into, looks like I can get 4 equal pieces out of it. And then push this together just a little bit. And make a short cane. And I'm going to cut it again. You can see each of the ends are different. I'm going to cut it again. And one more time. Push and roll. I've got kind of a polka dotted pattern. So you can keep combining canes in different ways to make whatever kind of pattern that you want. Now I probably shouldn't have used pink and green. They don't blend together very prettily. But if you use red and orange, or red and yellow, you get a beautiful orange in the center. And there's all sorts of things you can do with these. If I were to make a Skinner blend, say, of red and white, and then blue and white, and then orange and white, I could have kind of a rainbow effect. I could wrap each of them in black, and I could put together some quilts, or 9 blocks, what have you. So, hang on just a minute, and then we'll get to our next step. This next technique is called mokumigane. It's Japanese for rusted metal, but what it is, it's a way to layer up your beads and have them look, and cut them to have them look pretty good. Now I have actually 7 different slabs of clay. I've got pure bronze here. I've got bronze with a little bit of translucent, bronze with a little bit more, half and half, bronze and translucent, mostly translucent with a little bronze, and then just a smidgen of bronze with a translucent, and then a pure translucent. I'm going to stack these up on my board, and I'm going to layer it clay and gold foil. I believe I got the gold foil at either Rings and Things or Dick Blick. It's fairly expensive. You can also get it in silver. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get one piece of foil, and it's really, really, really like thin. You can't even tell you're holding it. It's that thin. And I'm going to try and cut, looks like about 1/4 of a page will work pretty good here. And I'm cutting it, there's a tissue paper in between each one, and sometimes it helps to be on the tissue paper. And I'm going to smooth that onto the clay. Let's see, try to get this out here so you get the best view. Then I'm going to add my next lighter layer of clay. And some foil. Smooth it down. My next lighter layer. And I'm trying to make at least one corner that's pretty much all the same. These are all different shapes. I've never been able to get things run through the pasta machine without having all sorts of different shapes. So at least I'm keeping this bottom corner pretty much the same. So we're going to layer clay, foil, clay, foil. And I'm trying not to overlap foil on foil because it doesn't stick to itself very well, but it sticks to the clay really well. And one last layer of foil. I'm going to put this away before it blows away or crinkles into little bits. You can see I've got little bits of gold foil all over the workspace. Excuse me. And then we'll put our last layer on, which is the translucent. And I made this absolutely as thin as I could. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is even this up. So I'm going to cut off the edges. So we have a nice pile of clay foil, clay foil, clay foil, clay foil, clay foil. And with the leftovers, I'm going to make a bunch of different size balls. Excuse me. Okay, we're back. I took the time to make all my balls out of different size balls out of my scrap clay, and now I'm going to actually use my brayer to push the clay together, get any air bubbles out of it. You know me and air bubbles, but once you get air bubbles, you'll be sorry that you didn't do something. And then I'm going to take these lumps and bumps and push them through on the bottom side of my clay. What we're trying to do is make a different, kind of a landscapey look. So I'll have hills and bumps and valleys and a three-dimensional surface. And so I'll push them all down. And you'll notice a little bit that the foil, I don't know if you can see it or not, how the foil is cracking a little bit underneath that translucent clay. That's good. Now I'm going to, excuse me just another moment, I need some tape here. I'm going to tape this index card to my work space. And you can see that we've pushed down enough on this little landscape that it is stuck to the index card. Now I got out a brand new blade when I started this. I want to make sure that it's absolutely as clean as it can be. I don't want any little bits of gold on it, because this part really, really needs a sharp blade. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at this highest hill slice off and you can see the different layers. Now for some reason that didn't go very quickly through. So what I'm going to do is get an alcohol pad here and clean it. I just don't need it to stick to the clay. I need it to slice through it. Wipe that off a little bit with some of the tissue from our foil. And try again. Now what we're still going to do, and we're trying to make real narrow slices. Oh, this is cutting much better. And if you turn these bottom side up, you can see the different layers that you're getting. And you lay them around carefully. And now I'll begin, I'm deep enough to where I can get to the next hill just a little bit. And I continue to slice, make real thin slices, as thin as I can. See, we get some beautiful, beautiful layering going on. And as you see, we're also getting some pretty neat layering here on the base. And the reason that we used our scrap clay to make the hills and valleys is because as we cut off the tops of the hills, we've got the same colors of clay in there as we began with, so they match up very nicely with one another. I continue to slice, and not every slice is perfect. And again, I'm going to clean up my blade. It seems to help a lot, keeping that blade clean. I'm going to round off the edge of this too. I think if I round off the edge of that layer that I'm slicing from, I'll get cleaner slices. Oops, it's just not. Something's making that real sticky for some reason. Either that or I'm trying to slice too thin. And we continue to slice and get our layers. And eventually you get to a point where you can get the whole layer and slice it. Let me show you here what a nice pattern we're developing on what we're slicing from. I'm trying to clean up without slicing my fingers. I got one little chunk of clay just stuck right there to that blade. There we go. I think I've got it. And anyways, we continue to slice as thinly as we can and continue to have this nice topographical map pattern, I guess you would call it. And what we do is we take some scrap clay that we've made into beads, and we cover these beads with little bits and pieces of our layers that we've found, that we've cut. And you want to make sure, because this is translucent, that you have covered the entire bead. And I probably should be using like a tan bead underneath. It wouldn't make so much difference as it would with this these odd colored beads. But I'm trying to save a little money, and I'm using up leftovers. So I'm just going to make sure that all the green is covered with brown. I don't want to leave green covered with translucent, because if I do that, why, I'll have a green and brown bead when I'm all done, because the translucent, when it's baked, really does come out in a translucent pattern. Now, if you wanted to put together a pin, you could make a large oval or a large circle and flatten it out. Not flat, but in a cabochon shape, which is kind of a half an oval. And let's see here, I'm going to get little bits and pieces and put it around the outside edge. So I don't have translucent, I have brown over the green. And then I'll pick a really beautiful layered pattern for over the top. And after that's baked and polished, it will look like a jewel. And of course I'm going to smooth it all out, make it looking pretty. And translucent materials, as you bring them out of the oven, again 20 minutes for each ½ inch, as you bring them out of the oven, you should have a dish of ice water right there handy. And you'll use that, you'll pop them right in the ice water as soon as they come out of the oven. You don't let these cool in the oven. And that will help bring out their translucency a little bit. And then we take 300 grit wet and dry sandpaper, and we put them in a dish of water, and we sand them with a sandpaper. To polish them. And polish them as smooth as you can. Sometimes it helps if you buff them first, perhaps with some cotton knit material like t-shirts are made out of. You can buff them first. Before you start to sand them. Or here's a little trick that works really well. You get an old sock, doesn't matter whether it's cotton or nylon or Orlon or whatever, but kind of a thick-ish sock, and you put all these beads in the sock, and you can use these for any beads. It doesn't have to be just necessarily this variety. Put them in the sock, pin or sew the sock closed. I wish I could talk a little better. And every time you do a load of laundry, you run that sock through the rest of your clothes. And it's amazing how much polishing you can get done by running these through the washing machine. Matter of fact, I do that with nearly all my beads. It means I don't have to buff out the fingerprints. It means they're pretty well polished altogether. And one other thing with these beads with the gold foil, anytime you use the gold foil, you should be aware that you need to put a finish on them. If you don't, the gold foil is going to flake off. And I don't know as you want that happening. And you should be able to buy a finish where you bought your clay. I ran across a bunch of Fimo finishes. They had both water and solvent-based finishes. I like the water-based finish because I can wash my brush out and use it again, and I don't have very much luck washing out the solvent-based. You could probably use nail polish, but you should have some sort of protective finish. Now, back when I first started, the big finish was Future floor polish. Now, I don't buy floor polish anymore, not since I found that Fimo stuff, so I don't even know if they make that brand anymore. But if you've got some in your cupboard, it would be really cool to put your protective finish on with that. And basically, what you can do is you can pierce these beads and then use some sort of put some wax in a bowl or a jar, a small jar. You don't want to work with the whole quart or whatever it comes in. And you could arrange them maybe on a string with knots in between them. Maybe you could arrange them on your florist wire and bend the end and just dip them in that polish and drip dry them. Now, the Fimo polish has a brush in each bottle, much like a nail polish brush, and I generally brush that on. But I do generally pierce them first and put them on the wire, and that way I can get all 4 or all 5 sides or all whatever sides all at the same time, which works well for me, and they don't touch anything. Otherwise, you have to do half at a time and let them dry, and do half at a time and let them dry. But anyways, once you finish covering your beads, or your cabochons, or whatever it is that you are making, you pierce them, bake them, and you've got a glorious, it's a really dressy kind of bead. This may look like wood when it's all done. That's what it reminds me most of right now. It may look like, if you use yellows, kind of an amber. Reds look like rubies. Blue is, of course, emeralds, and then there's greens and all sorts of stuff. But you can get some really dressy looking material, some beads looking out of this. Probably more dressy than anything we've done before. And part of the dressiness is the fact that you polish them and you sand them and you put a finish on it. Well, I hope this has been interesting and helpful for you, and thanks for listening.